I'll adjust.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer. And no, that is not Bernard Fernandez, another former BWAA president. That is the one and only Mr. Happy himself, Jack Hirsch. Jack, how are you?
In a good mood, back in New York, where supposedly where the action was. There was some boxing activity in Florida. When I was there, before I left, I went to a documentary for Muhammad Ali Jr. I went to a lecture by our friend Russell Peltz talking about his book in boxing and a couple of other things. So, but it's good to be back in New York.
All right, Jack. Well, that's good, Jack. Look, before we jump into the boxing, you got to hook me. You got to help me out on a couple things. Number one, I know you did a draft show with a couple other smart men. I keep on hearing that the team I root the hardest against, well, it's a toss-up between Ohio State and the Eagles. I keep on hearing the Eagles had a good draft. Is that so?
Not only did they have a good draft, Frank, they got the DeAndre Swift from the Detroit Lions for low draft picks. And DeAndre Swift's problem is he was injured a lot for the Detroit Lions, but when he's healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. Will he be healthy? Big question mark. Maybe there was an attitude issue why the Eagles were able to get him so cheap. But if he buys in at Philadelphia, wow, that's going to really improve the Eagle running game.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Jack. And as much as it hurts me to say this, but I really do think the Eagles are one of the top flight organizations in the NFL. I mean, they don't make mistakes.
And they have an incredible GM in Howie Roseman. Incredible right now, but let the Eagles have a couple of disappointing seasons. They'll be calling for him to get fired. That's the way it goes in boxing, Frank. You get these great trainers for fighters. You hear about this new marriage, the fighter's saying how well he's working with the trainer, how wonderful things are, and especially it gets magnified if they have one good fight together. But guess what?
And Jack,
it's usually a short-term relationship.
Philly fans are the worst with that. Before we jump fully into boxing, in about a half hour, the Sixers and the Celtics tip off for the semifinals of the East. Do I have anything to worry about?
You do. I like Boston in the series, but Boston can be had. Joel Embiid might not be playing tonight, is he?
I don't think he's playing tonight, but I think they're confident he'll get in the series.
If they could take it to two games apiece into a game 5, the longer it goes, the better it's going to favor the Sixers because Joel Embiid's capable of putting together a monster game. James Harden, for short bursts of a game or two, could be the James Harden of old, and
right.
Maxey on the team, and Tobias Harris. The bench won't be as important if it comes down to the last couple of games, and the starters can play on adrenaline.
All right, so I do have a little bit to worry about. Okay, and Joe Bergman, I know you're Mr. Philadelphia sports guy, number 2, but let me just say this. I have a saying, it's called can't and won't, okay? The Sixers can't win the championship, and the Phillies won't. Now we can talk some boxing, Jack. There was a big fight last weekend. You and I kind of agree that it was a little bit overrated as a big fight, but it did big numbers. And The guy that emerged, Tank Davis, thinks he's now the face of boxing. I don't know if I would go that far, but I think he's shown that he is one of the 10 best in the game. We both picked Tank to win. I've been on Tank. You like to pin him on me and say I'm his biggest cheerleader. I'm not, but I think my validation that he's an outstanding fighter and one of the best in the world is starting to be validated.
Yeah, I picked Garcia to win a razor-thin split decision, which was my final analysis.
That's right. I thought you picked Tank. No, that's right.
Right, and it's not that Garcia was that far away from what I predicted, because if you eliminate the 2 knockdowns, it was a pretty even fight all in all. But let me tell you something about Tank Davis. I've kind of changed my view on him completely. Tank Davis is in Mayweather territory, and I'm not talking about just as an attraction, but as a fighter. I know the styles are different. Mayweather would always seem to lose 3-4 rounds every fight. He didn't dominate the way Roy Jones did, or the way Ali did in his prime, or Sugar Ray Robinson in his prime, perhaps. But he always got the show done. Oh, he wants me to get another partner. Okay. I'll go with that. But Tank always is going to solve the puzzle no matter what. And he does it. And I think this is going to be a pattern the rest of his career. He's not going to win decisions 11 rounds to 1, 12-0, or knock a guy late in the fight after completely dominating. Guys are always going to have moments against Tank, and it's not even going to concern him because he knows he's going to unlock the puzzle no matter what. And I'm getting that feeling he's a rare fighter that way.
I've been trying to tell you that, Jack. Tank is a cerebral fighter, even though he can punch.
Right.
And what I saw in the fight, and I think I agree with you, other than the 2 knockdowns, it wasn't a blowout, but Tank takes notes early. He has a big guy in front of him who can punch. And I said that Tank is good again. Because of his size, he's like Huawei. Everybody he fights is taller than him. That's not an issue. He makes guys overcommit, reach, and lunge. And then he comes up the middle and on the inside. He did that to Garcia. So this is what I think happened. I think he saw enough in the first round. He let Garcia get a little overconfident. Then he blasted him with that left and dropped him. I think Garcia went back to his corner. And Jack, I think he was bewildered with the point that he didn't know what was happening and he couldn't stop it. But Tank came out and just boxed him to see what he would do, because I think he felt he was still dangerous. And then after the 6th round, Garcia has only won 1 round, maybe 2 at the most. I think I had it 4-2, but the knockdown made it big. And Goosen told him, you got to pick it up and you got to be assertive. I think Garcia said to himself, I have 2 paths to go. Either I lay back and hope he makes a mistake and I catch him, or I stand my ground and there's a chance he can get me and knock me out, but I'll give myself a better chance to catch him. And I think that's what happened. I think Garcia knew after that 6th round that Tank was not going to let him go the distance. He was going to put pressure on him. And I think Garcia stood his ground. And as we saw, he got stopped. I think, Jack, they're different levels. I think Tank is a complete fighter. Ryan's not.
Well, right now I look at it this way. If Devin Haney beats Lomachenko decisively is the key word, not just beat him, but decisively.
One-sided decision or stoppage?
Well, it doesn't have to be, well, 9 rounds to 3 at least.
Okay.
You know, we're talking glowingly about Devin Haney after the fight. That's what
right.
I mean.
Okay.
Let's say he does that. Then I think there's one group you could lump them all together. Tank Davis, Devin Haney, and Shakur Stevenson. I don't have a problem with calling Tank the best of the 3 if you want. That's fine. But I think they're all on the same level. They're all in the same front seat of the car sitting. And then I think you have the backup pack who isn't quite on their level, but they're still outstanding in a way in their own right. And they pose a threat even though they're not of that level. And that'll be, the Josh Taylors, the Teofimo Lopez's, the Regis Prograis, and the Ryan Garcias. Not as good, but they can be competitive with the others, but not really beat them. But you never know what could happen on a given night. Okay.
But Jack, those guys aren't going to fight lightweight.
Well, when you talk, well, we're talking about, right, but I'm talking
if
about.
we stick with just 135, I think at the end of the day, I think that Tank and Shakur Stevenson could be this era's version of Leonard Hearns. I think they're both that good. I don't have a problem if you put Stevenson ahead of Tank. I think Tank may have a little bit better resume right now, but I think they're the two best fighters out there. And I think when all is said and done, I think that'll be the big fight, because I do think Haney will beat Lomachenko. And I think whoever Haney fights, if he fights Tank or Stevenson, I would pick either one of them to beat him. So I think it's a 2-horse race. But when I think of the guys on the second tier, Jack, I think of Keyshawn Davis and I think of Frank Martin. I think they're the guys to look at. And maybe even William Cepeda is making a little bit of noise too. So that lightweight division is really stacked.
They're a little bit of ways. But I lump together the lightweight and junior welterweight division in this sense. If Tank was going to fight one of those guys, the argument's not going to be, well, I'm a lightweight, you're junior welterweight. He'll make them take off some pounds. And if they want the big payday, they'll do what Garcia did. Now, I think the result of this fight, Tank and Garcia, would have happened the same way now, no matter what.
Exactly, I agree.
I don't want any excuses. He had to dehydrate, rehydrate, lose weight. He was weakened. Ryan Garcia and his people, they have a great excuse, and people are going to buy into it. Oh, Tank weakened them by making them make the weight and all. I don't go for that at all. The same thing we heard, well, Canelo was too green when he fought Mayweather, blah, blah. Mayweather would have beaten the best of Canelo regardless, okay? He still beat a good Canelo. Canelo did improve later on. But, and Ryan Garcia might improve later on. You think Garcia quit? You have a problem with how it ended?
Jack, I don't. I know those shots hurt and they take a lot out of you. Could he have continued? Perhaps. I don't want to get in his head. I know those shots do hurt and they can debilitate you. I think it was a little bit that he was hurt, and I think he just knew he was outgunned.
I'm never against the fighter pulling himself out of a fight once he feels he can't win the fight. I don't want to see him take a beating, take unnecessary punches. If he really went into a fight feeling he can win, and you get the feeling Garcia really felt he was going to win, okay, coming into the fight. I have to trust that was his genuine feeling. But there had to come a point during the fight before the final body shot where he thought to himself, this guy's better than me. I'm not going to beat him. And when that
I think that definitely played a role.
When that realization came to him, maybe it took away his resolve. If he felt he could still win the fight after the body shot, I kind of feel he could have gotten up. And I'm not condemning him for not getting up.
And I agree with you, but here's why he's not getting that benefit of the doubt across the board. Jack, he talked a lot of smack before this fight. He really did. And I'm sorry, I never fought at that level, but I'm thinking if I fought at that level and I did all that talking, you're going to have to kill me. I think he might have been able to beat the count. I don't think he wanted to, but personally to me, if I did all that talking, I want to think that now, if I can get up, I'm getting up, and you're just going to have to beat the hell out of me. But I'm not going to take it. But I'm not going to say he quit. I think he could have got up, but I don't think he mailed it in. I think he realized he was in with a better guy, and he was hurt. And if he continued, it was going to be more of the same. And now, and here's the problem with Ryan Garcia. Jack, he dumps his trainer. Okay? First, we hear he's weak at the weight. Then he said he lost interest during the course of the fight. Ryan, shut your mouth. You have potential. You'll get another shot, but shut your mouth with all the excuses.
But Joe Goosen, this was their first fight together, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Okay. And Joe, listen, a fighter's entitled to have whoever he wants as his trainer, but you shouldn't blame the trainer, for the loss. But if he feels he'd be better off with another trainer going forward, he could have as many trainers as he wants because it's his career, Frank. Trainers can work with a lot of fighters. They can move on fighter to fighter to fighter. Listen, I was thinking of a famous trainer the other day in one of the stories I wrote on him many years ago, Gil Clancy. Gil Clancy trained both Jerry Quarry at the time and Jorge Ahumada, who were fighting the same night in different locations. Quarry was fighting his rematch with Smoking Joe Frazier at the Garden, and Ahumada was fighting
Bob Foster.
Bob Foster. But of course, Clancy stayed with the money guy, Quarry. But Clancy told me, well, Quarry wasn't as mentally strong as Ahumada, so he felt it was more important that he be with Quarry. Yeah, I mean, if I don't go for things like that. I mean, they sound good, but you normally go with the guy to bigger traction. Let's say Canelo Alvarez all of a sudden called Joe Goosen to work with him, and he had to leave Ryan Garcia. I mean, what would Goosen do? Or if he could go and work with Tyson Fury, like for big money.
Jack, that's the problem. They say with Goosen that he has a lot of guys and you don't get all his attention. But my problem is, it's not a problem. I believe, and this isn't just in boxing, this is across the board. I think the coach or the trainer gets too much credit for the win and too much blame for the loss. And I think this is another example of that. And I just think Ryan Garcia needs somebody to blame. And when fighters lose, that's how they react. They can't believe that they lost. They don't want to accept that they got beat fair and square. It's easier for them to process it and package it than if they find something to blame. And who's the easiest person to blame is the trainer. But look, it doesn't matter who worked Garcia's corner. He was not going to beat Tank Davis on that night.
Exactly. Oscar De La Hoya was nowhere to be found after the fight. Later, he claimed there were death threats and his security detail rushed him out of there. I mean, really?
And Hopkins wasn't allowed to be there. I didn't know that till after the fight.
Hopkins tried to be there. How could Oscar leave? I mean, what death threats? If it was the Las Vegas Police Department who came to him and said, we got to get you out of here, Oscar. Okay? I mean, I could understand it, even though my reaction would have been, I want to be in the ring with him. I mean, who was going to go after Oscar at that point? I mean, I don't get it. That guy won the fight too, Tank Davis. I mean, I just don't understand it. It's a very bad look, as far as Oscar goes.
I don't like the look either, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mayweather faction was trying to mess with Oscar and maybe they made a couple crazy calls to get in his head. That wouldn't surprise me. But like you said, I haven't heard that the Vegas police were involved. So I don't know what to do with Oscar in this situation. I don't like the look. I have a hard time with Oscar as a manager and promoter as it is. And this doesn't endear me to him anymore.
Yeah, you know what I get a kick out of, where Oscar had been trained by Floyd Mayweather Sr. And I remember last June at the Hall of Fame inductions, Bernard Hopkins was getting inducted in Canastota. So De La Hoya flew in from California to see it. And I remember De La Hoya gets in right before it begins. And he goes over to Mayweather Sr. because Mayweather Jr. is being inducted too, to shake Mayweather Sr.'s hand. And Mayweather Sr. warmly shook Oscar's hand because they were together for years, as boxing.
Right.
And then Oscar goes to a seat, and the guy next to Mayweather Sr. gave him one of these, like, why are you shaking Oscar's hand for? And Mayweather Sr.'s going, come on, come on, this was my fight. I actually liked the guy, I mean, obviously he'll side with his son, but they had a very tight relationship, Mayweather Sr. and Oscar. That's what makes
Didn't Mayweather Sr. say after the fight he thought that Oscar won the fight against Floyd?
I bet he regrets that now. I bet he regrets it. You know, he had a falling. He kind of had a falling out with his son. I mean, they were talking, but they weren't as tight knit as they would become after that again. So if you asked him it now, he'd probably say he was just messing and this and that, and probably he was. I don't know why he said. Maybe he really felt it. I mean, even though
it was close, but I thought Floyd pulled it out.
Right, it's not beyond comprehension. You know, some other people thought Oscar won. It was a split decision, which goes back to what I said before. Mayweather would lose rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if Tank follows the blueprint. He fights Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, and wins split decisions, you know, and keeps it going that way. I wouldn't be surprised at all now.
It's funny for a guy that you think is more of a street guy and he comes from the streets. He's really a cerebral fighter and he really knows what he's doing in there. He knows how to make his size an advantage for him. And I see that it was either ESPN or Ring Magazine came out with their top 10, and I think they have him number 10, which I don't have a problem with.
I want to give a shout out to Tank Davis's attitude. If he could just act outside the ring the way he does, and exhibit the same way he exhibits sportsmanship after fight. Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia absolutely trashed him badly. After the fight, no cheap shots, friendly, a gentleman towards both Romero and Ryan Garcia. Right after the fight, you know, he could have said some mean-spirited things.
No, he was cool.
And been justified in saying it, perhaps. Okay?
Jack, Tank said that he's the face of boxing. I don't think he's the face of boxing. I think he's starting to creep into the conversation, but I don't think he's the face of boxing. I actually think even at this moment, the fact that he got handled pretty well by Bivol, I still think Canelo is the face of boxing. I think Anthony Joshua could have been. I think that's gone forever. But I think Canelo right now is still the face of boxing.
Well, it's not gone forever for Joshua necessarily, because it's not just about being the best. You could argue Joshua's never going to be a great heavyweight. He's never going to be discussed about great heavyweight champions, and I'll agree with you there. But you don't know a face of boxing. Like even a Ryan Garcia now is probably one of the top 10 big names in boxing. Not best fighters, not by a long shot, but big names as far as charisma. He's elevated himself recently. And those type of guys could keep it going for a while. Like Jake Paul, I could say is top 10, lower part of top 10 or whatever. You know, as crazy as it seems. But as far as 1-2, I agree with you. Canelo holds the edge, but the gap is closing. And for Canelo to hold on to that number one position in the face of boxing, he's going to have to up the ante after this weekend. Assuming he beats John Ryder, he has to fight a better caliber opponent, a lot better to maintain being the face of boxing.
Did you see what he said today?
I don't believe it. But he'll fight Dimitri Bivol at 175 pounds for his light heavyweight title.
He has to do that, Jack.
He won't do it.
He said that what I said would happen. If he fights him at 68, he won't get credit for the win. They'll say he weakened him and it means nothing. I don't think he can say he has to fight him at 175 and then in say July, if they make the fight, he says, no, I wanted it at 168. I got to give him credit, Jack. If he fights him at 175.
He's not going to do it, Frank. He's not going to do it. He's just talking. And then when push comes to shove, Canelo is going to listen to his trainer/manager, father figure, Eddie Reynoso, who says, no, you were entitled to get an advantage in this fight. You're the big name. You shouldn't have to adjust to him. He should adjust to you. He's going to appeal to Canelo's ego, and Canelo's going to say, okay. and they'll make Bivol get down to like 170 or something like that.
So a catch weight.
A catch weight, and the light heavyweight belts will be at stake. But let me tell you something, Frank. Your thinking is good for a purist and a hardcore fan like yourself by saying he won't get credit for it. At the end of the day, no one's going to remember.
It's about this.
Guys like you. No. They'll see that Canelo avenged the win in a rematch, and that's all they're going to talk about. They're not going to talk about the circumstances. Does anyone say, oh, Jim Jeffries was out of the ring 6 years when he lost to Jack Johnson, the White Hope fight?
Everybody says that, Jack.
No one says it.
Everybody says that. I never had a conversation where Jeffries' exile wasn't mentioned and he had to lose 110 pounds.
Right. But that's just what it's going to be at the end. Just like with injuries, no one cares at the end. And they're just going to judge. Look, the burden's on Bivol too. If he's willing to sell out for the dollar and lose those pounds, and then he loses to Canelo, I don't want any excuse. I'll give Canelo the credit. Okay.
Okay, Jack. I'm going to say, and Joe Bergman, we're going to get to that, get to Wilder and Joshua. But Jack, I'm going to say that you're wrong. I think Canelo has to fight him at 175. And I think that he will. For all the reasons I've said, what you said is very plausible. I just think that Canelo's at the point where he just knows he gets no credit if he beats him at 168. It'll be something to follow. As far as his fight this weekend, he's an 18-1 favorite. John Ryder has lost 5 times. He's only been stopped once. He's an aggressive southpaw. He's not very accurate. He's tough, a little wild, not a huge puncher, but they're different levels. And I think that Ryder is the type style that Canelo feasts on, Jack. Guys that try to muscle him and beat him up, he does good. Guys that box him do better against him, as we saw with Mayweather and Bivol. I think Canelo wins inside of maybe 7 or 8 rounds.
Well, I'll tell you, he beat Zach Parker in his last fight. Zach Parker got injured during the fight. Parker was actually favored to win that fight. And Parker had been in line to fight Demetrius Andrade. Speak of Andrade when missing in action again, forget about him. But Danny Jacobs,
boy.
Yeah, my boy. I should say. I'm tired of this inactivity. I'm tired of a big-time talent sitting on his behind and not fighting. Just fight for $50,000 a fight. Just get your name out there. Keep it out there. Keep the pressure on, the opponents that you're chasing. And then I saw John Ryder. He beat Danny Jacobs. A little bit of a disputed decision, but this wasn't the same Danny Jacobs as early in his career. It wasn't a shot Danny Jacobs, but not the same.
But a Danny Jacobs on the decline.
Right, but Danny Jacobs faded in the late rounds of the fight after building up a very big lead. A lot of people feel Jacobs, maybe won by a couple of points like I did, but the idea that he let Ryder get back into the fight and put a real question mark, in my mind, whether Jacobs would get the decision when the final bell rang, which ultimately he didn't. It reflected well that Ryder will keep fighting hard. He'll come in the ring in great condition.
Oh, he's a gamer, no doubt about it.
He'll fight Canelo hard the whole way. There's not going to be any quitting Ryder at any point in this fight. But the bottom line, at the end of the day, Canelo is just too good now.
He just levels above him.
I thought Canelo was declining a little bit from what he was earlier. I still feel that way. And if I'm going to tell myself I'm wrong, I was maybe a little hasty. I would do maybe the David Benavidez comparison with Caleb Plant and say, look, Canelo did a little better against Plant than Benavidez did. So if I'm going to do that, maybe he hasn't declined quite the way I think he has. But even if Canelo has declined somewhat, he has more than enough left to stop Ryder. I look for it to be about a 9th-round stoppage.
Okay, so we're almost exactly on the same page. And again, guys that fight Canelo with force on force, they're the guys he does good against. Guys that move and box and pick up their feet, they do better against him. And as far as Ryder, everything you said about the Jacobs fight, I'm on line with. But, Jack, there are some people that thought that he got robbed against Callum Smith.
Yeah, that fight too. But Callum Smith, he ultimately fought Canelo himself. I mean, early in this, or like about 3-4 years.
2 years ago.
How long? 3 years.
I think it was 2021.
Okay, a little more recent than I thought. And Canelo won a wide decision. One of Canelo's good fights, actually. He chased Callum Smith around the ring and, beat him down.
No, Jack, you were actually right. It was December 2020.
Okay, so I was more in line with it, but whatever. But
Callum Smith is a light heavyweight now and may be fighting Beterbiev.
You want to know something? Canelo's really going to be fired up in Mexico. This might end earlier than the 9th round. I could see it maybe anywhere 6-9. I think Canelo's going to turn the heat up at some point.
Yeah, he gets a stoppage.
I could see Canelo being methodical the first couple of rounds, kind of boxing, careful, picking his spots, and going to the body and building up steam as they go along. Yes, anywhere around 6-9.
All right, let's feed Joe Bergman. He wants to know what we think about Joshua and Wilder fighting. Look, it's supposed to be in December, Jack. That's just too far off for me to speculate. I can't feel confident about that.
I'm confident it's going to take place because they're working on a massive deal with the Saudis. And Joshua was supposed to have one fight he was supposed to have 3 fights this year. So he had his first fight against Jermaine Franklin. Then he was supposed to have a second fight, most likely against Dillian White. And they're both promoted by Eddie Hearn. Very easy fight to make. And then he was supposed to have a major match in December. But that so-called major match, we didn't know for sure whether it would take place. Eddie Hearn would reach out. But now they're guaranteed virtually of having the major match, and they don't want to risk it with any.
So neither one of them is going to fight before December.
Exactly. And Wilder, since getting stopped by Fury in the 3rd fight,
has 1 round in.
Robert Helenius, we both like Wilder in the fight against Joshua. But I'm going to tell you, if Wilder doesn't hit him more than a few times, and it's easy to say Wilder just has to hit him once. We don't have the evidence that Joshua has a poor chin. We don't. The Andy Ruiz fight may have just been an equilibrium punch, a little bit of a fluke punch, may have been, or maybe has a weak chin. But if that were the case, it was an equilibrium thing, and he was in a fog, the type of thing that could happen to anyone on a given night. Even the great Sugar Ray Robinson, I think he commented he got hit with a punch and was in the fog and woke up from it a few rounds later.
Artie Levine.
Artie Levine. Good one, Frank. And outside of that, getting knocked down by Klitschko, that doesn't mean a guy has a weak chin. Klitschko's a hard puncher, was up for the fight, and he got up from the knockdown with Klitschko and ultimately stopped him in the fight of the year. If he has a weak chin, Wilder's going to stretch him. Because Wilder's.
I don't think he has a weak chin, Jack. I don't think he has a great chin. Here's what I think. I think he's damaged mentally. And if Wilder can still punch, I think he'll knock him out because AJ is big. He's there. And I am not confident that he will cut loose and let his hands go. He's a stronger guy.
Here, Frank. If Wilder doesn't knock him out, let's say AJ can absorb the few shots that Wilder lands. Let's say that happens. Can Wilder win a decision over Joshua? I don't think so.
I would be willing to say that if Joshua got to the finish line, he would get the decision. He probably wins the fight.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. He's got more skills than Wilder. Wilder's got the...
Jack, he's stronger. He's got 2 hands. He's a better boxer. But my problem with him is here. He doesn't get off, and he doesn't throw punches with bad intentions anymore. He's not the seek and destroy counter puncher, come in behind the jab to set up the right hand anymore. And I just think if he waits on Wilder and he's unsure of himself, that will give Wilder so much more room to land that right hand. And Wilder is the quicker. He does have quicker hands. So I can see AJ coming in. Wilder gets there first. But again, we don't know what Wilder has. Remember, that Fury fight, that last fight, he took a pounding. And I don't know what he has left. I mean, apparently he can still punch. Helenius don't have a great chin, but Wilder didn't hit him with his best shot, and he still got him out. I would pick Wilder. Maybe by the end of the year, Jack, maybe AJ will be fixed, but I'm just not confident in him, and I don't think he has confidence. I don't think he's been the same guy since the Klitschko fight, and I think Andy Ruiz sealed the doubt that was there, and I don't think AJ has looked good since he lost to Ruiz, and that's including beating Ruiz in the rematch. I think he fought like a thief. I think he ran. He fought a fat turtle. He did what he had to do, but the degree of difficulty wasn't high, and I don't think he looked. And against Usyk, to me, he was stuck in his mind. Why is he trying to box a guy that's known for being a great boxer? And against Jermaine Franklin, I'm sorry, Jermaine Franklin is not going 12 rounds with Anthony Joshua pre-2017.
But the big question is, are they going to fight in December? And I say yes. I really believe it's going to happen. Early in their career, Joshua ducked Wilder. Early in his career, he clearly ducked Wilder. But I think now they're coming to the table. You know, Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, because I don't want to say it's cash out. But no, they're not building Joshua up anymore. And Joshua needs a signature win going forward to be one of the big faces in boxing. If he can get that one signature win, he'll be back in negotiating position. Imagine he beats Wilder and Fury says 60-40 my favor. It's screwed.
No way he has to go for that. You're right. Yeah, Joshua's one knockout away from being the draw again. I agree with you.
Or he's at least 50-50 with Fury, you know, at least. You know, Fury can't, no one could dictate to him if that were the case.
Now, is Fury and Usyk going to be on the same card in December?
Man, Fury's the loose cannon to get him to commit to do this, to do that. Why isn't Fury fighting anyone now? We don't hear
Jack,
about
I can't figure him out unless it's all about money, no risk. I don't like it. He's turning everybody off. Again, what have we seen from him since the last Wilder fight where he was dropped twice and took a little bit of a beating too? 6 rounds with Dillian White, who mailed it in. So we don't even know what Fury has left.
I think I know. I think Fury just doesn't enjoy boxing anymore. I think, you know, he doesn't enjoy training. So he'll do it for a fight. He'll go to training camp, get in top shape for a fight, but he's not that interested in the fighting aspect.
But it really has to be worth his while.
No,
I mean money-wise. The money-wise, because
he knows he has.
I'm seeing that he doesn't want to train. I agree with you there.
Josh was more a fighter than Fury is at the moment. Attitude-wise, Anthony Joshua, attitude-wise, right now.
I'll go with that. Anthony Joshua's not ducked anybody, and I disagree. He ducked Wilder, but he's fought more elite guys than any other heavyweight in the world.
But Anthony Joshua's probably thinking, you know, okay, I'm fighting in December. I'll be in the gym at least part-time for the time being. I wouldn't be surprised. But Fury is lying around getting fat, this and that, and figuring, okay, I'll go to training camp for 3 months when I have to, and I'll be in top shape. He's kind of like Ali was late in his career, Fury. Muhammad Ali was an underachiever, actually. Okay.
Yeah, Ali just figured that he couldn't get knocked out. He let the guy tire himself out and then come on and steal the fight.
Ali didn't train. Ali trained hard for the third Norton fight, but in between fights, he rarely trained. You know, and that's not how you do it. Show up for 6 weeks of training after not doing anything for 4 months.
But like Ali, I think Fury thinks he's here and everybody else is here and he can cut corners and get away with it. And that's when you lose. So I guess we can't say if we're going to see Fury and Usyk in December. But what if that doesn't happen?
I wonder whether Usyk is unnerving Fury just a teeny bit, because Fury, for all his talk about Usyk, he knows
He
Usyk
never got he never got under his skin.
No,
No.
not just that. He knows Usyk has a skill level he's maybe never seen before for pure skills. He says, oh, he's a little man, I'll smash him. Fury's thinking, I'm so much bigger than this guy, I'm going to run over him. But a part of Fury's maybe thinking, but this guy's really good. He's had this great amateur career. And as a professional, this guy has got real skills.
I think he knows that, Jack, but I don't think he fears him. I think he may not want to go through the work to do what it takes to get ready for the fight. But I don't think that he fears him or his skill. And apparently Usyk is going to fight Du Bois, right? Dubois?
Yeah, that's a mandatory from the WBO. I mean, and listen, anything's possible. Du Bois does have some talent. You know, he lost the one fight to Joe Joyce, and anything's possible. I mean, Usyk.
You know, I would be interested in seeing Fury. If we can't get Usyk, I would be interested in seeing Fury versus Zhang. I mean, I think Fury, from what he was, based on what he was, I think he wins the fight.
Yeah.
But again, if he's looking past guys and he's not getting in shape, Zhang can punch. Maybe, I'd have some interest in watching that fight.
Yeah, I mean, Zhang has, that in a really strong straight left, and Fury's tall and upright. I could see Zhang reaching him with some hard lefts, but let's be honest about it. If he could go 3 fights against Wilder without getting knocked out, I don't think Zhang is doing it.
No, Zhang probably doesn't hit as hard. He doesn't get off as quick, but Fury may not be the same guy. So Fury is the only one that's holding up the big card in Saudi. All right. I saw you say on Facebook last week, and we've been fighting about this and going round and round, and you were right. I said that we would get Crawford and Spence before the end of 2022. We didn't. Now you believe they're going to fight because Joe Santaquito wrote an article for ESPN and said that.
No. Joe's a close friend of mine. And it's not, Joe mentioned it, first broke the story.
Right.
And from what I gather, talking to people as well, that the sides are talking, seeing what could happen. I'm using logic this time, my own logic. Neither guy has anywhere to go, Frank. They have nowhere to go. They've got to come out and fight. I mean, Errol Spence, what's his option now? Is he really going to fight Boots Ennis? Of course not. They're not going to get made.
No, it would be the dumbest mistake he could make. A terrible business move.
Right. He knows that, okay? If he's going to take that type of risk, he's got to get a colossal payday for that, which he can't. Ennis isn't that type of a
not yet. Nope.
Yet. So if he moves up to junior middleweight, he's not going to fight his stablemate and friend Jamel Charlo. They have the same trainer, Derek James.
Right.
If somehow this happens, okay, if Tim Tszyu upsets Charlo, you'll see Spence go right to Tszyu instead of fighting Crawford. But that fight's not supposedly going to happen for, till this. I don't know what date they.
I thought it was September.
September, the Charlo Tszyu rematch.
I think that's what I saw.
Wow, that's way out. So Spence can't wait on that. And what is Crawford going to do? Fight his mandatory Alex Roca, is promoted by Golden Boy, go to purse bids. What happens? It just doesn't make sense.
It's a shame this fight has drug on so long, Jack, because it's clearly lost a lot of the excitement around it. It's been so long since we saw Spence, over a year. We saw Crawford we saw him the end of last year. I mean, they really did drop the ball on this one. Now, if they announce it and it's made, I'm sure the excitement will start back up, because aside from Ennis, I still think they're probably the 2 best welterweights in the world, both undefeated, great style clash, 2 guys that really bring it. I want to see the fight. But we're so used to being let down that I can't get excited about it.
It's not as big. Sometimes a fighter can delay a fight like that. Like in the case, for example, Terence Crawford. Golden Boy wants to sign him. They keep saying, oh, let us do this for you. Let's say hypothetically they could match him with Virgil Ortiz, one of their fighters who's a excellent
Great fight, but not a blockbuster.
He had to pull out of his recent fight. He has some type of problems. We hope all is well there. So he's not in the picture, but he would have been a chip to throw in front of Crawford, and one that Crawford would have been clearly favored, but it would have been the type of fight that would have been interesting. Crawford fighting a hot prospect.
Yeah, it's a real fight.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way of putting it. It's not just a tune-up for Crawford. Crawford would have to be on his A game to be sure that he'd come out of the ring a winner.
Jack, where these guys messed up? They looked at Pacquiao and Mayweather, and they saw how stringing the public along made the fight bigger. The problem is, and they both missed it, was Pacquiao and Mayweather were superstars and the two biggest faces in the sport. Nobody outside of hardcore boxing fans know who Crawford and Spence are. So they don't have that latitude, as great as they are. And I would take both of them. I would take either Crawford or Spence to beat Mayweather or Pacquiao that fought each other. But it doesn't matter because nobody knows who they are. And this is one time where letting the fight marinate is probably going to hurt them financially, and they have nowhere to go.
Let me tell you, I know this seems insanely crazy, Frank, and try not to laugh at me. Ryan, boxing's an entertainment business. Keep in mind, it's all about the pay-per-view buys, this, to that. Hypothetically, if Ryan Garcia wants to fight Errol Spence now, and Oscar De La Hoya calls up Al Heyman again, they worked on the Tank Davis fight, saying, look at all the pay-per-view buys we could do. Garcia against Spence. You as a purist is going to say, leave me alone. Don't make that fight. He just got stopped by Tank Davis. Business-wise, that would do really good business. Garcia would say, I'm strong. I'm at 147. I don't have to lose the weight against
I'm
Tank.
5'10". Yeah.
And because Garcia has a following, and Errol Spence is a known boxing commodity, a respected one, obviously, I could see the fight doing decent pay-per-view money, numbers, and that's a way for the PBC to further avoid Crawford in a certain sense.
Jack, and that would only do money because fans can be dopes, and they'll buy anything.
Frank.
It's not a real fight. I would have no interest, but would I buy it the night of the fight? I probably would.
And
Jack, let's talk about something that we never touched on. And I know you didn't see the movie, but you know the career.
Yeah.
I saw the George Foreman movie Saturday. Now, if you want to go by accuracy and things like that, and the portrayals of some of the characters like Howard Cosell, Ali, Dick Sadler, Doc Broadus, they were terrible. I think the guy that played Foreman did a good job. But the movie has really been getting ripped. And I ripped it at first. And then I sat back and I thought, there was no cursing in it, no violence. It's a feel-good story. It's true. You can take anybody to see it. And I compared it to a Wikipedia version, only a movie, where it was a Wikipedia fact-based movie with pictures and sound. And if you're not a big boxing fan, it gives you a Cliff Notes version of George Foreman's career from cradle to grill. And,
non-boxing fans?
I'm sorry?
Non-boxing fans, would they enjoy it as much as a boxing fan would?
Yes, Jack, I'll tell you why. Because they saw enough of the second act of Foreman and the commercials and the Johnny Carson show interviews that I think they would find out some things about him that they didn't know. Would they all be fact-based? No, they skipped over a lot of things. They only had him being married twice. He was married 4 times. They didn't really go into the kids. But it was a good movie, but it made me think, Jack, is that the greatest comeback in history? With Foreman losing the title at 25 to Ali, and then 20 years later, with a 10-year gap, beating undefeated Michael Moore, who was the linear champ. Is that the greatest comeback we've seen in sports?
I remember when he first started his comeback, I was doing these boxing shows from time to time on Manhattan cable TV, and myself and my co-host, a guy named Roger St. James, we talk about the Foreman comeback. And it was like a joke to us, just laughing about it. People that, can Foreman win the heavyweight title again? And the attitude was, come on, be real here. Don't be ridiculous. That was the thing. Yeah, so you can say it was the greatest comeback. I mean, at his age. But the thing about it is, boxing's different from any other sport. Michael Moore was dominating that fight against Foreman.
He was.
Not that Foreman retained skills. A young George Foreman doesn't lose those rounds to Michael
No,
Moore.
he knocks Michael Moore out in 3 rounds.
Right, exactly. So, Foreman wasn't nearly the same fighter, but he compensated for it in certain ways. And in certain ways, he was a better fighter the second time around, not as physically gifted, obviously. But I think this movie, Frank, was made for faith-based audiences. Now, you ask the average woman a woman who's not a boxing fan at all, who Mike Tyson is. They'll know who Mike Tyson is. They'll say, oh, the boxer. You ask them who George Foreman is, chances are they'll say, oh, the grilling machine.
Yes. He parlayed that really good. I don't think in the movie his faith was a big part. They didn't tell you exactly what it was, but his mother was very, strong in her faith. That carried over to George. But I didn't get the impression that they were pushing it on me. So I like that. As far as his comeback, I knew the story. I know some close to Foreman. And Jack, believe it or not, and I think you'll buy it, a lot of it was, besides the fact that he had somebody lose his money, he looked at Mike Tyson and saw him as a beatable guy for him, where he might have thought, I'm not sure I can beat Riddick Bowe, maybe Lennox Lewis, but Mike Tyson is made for me. And that was part of the reason why he came back, because he thought Tyson would be there. And that's the one guy he matched up with. And when he came back,
title, he didn't come back with Tyson in mind per se.
Jack, his goal, his dream was to fight Tyson for the title. And Buster Douglas upset that.
Yeah, but who he fought for the title was Evander Holyfield. He was unsuccessful with, but he fought a strong fight. And I remember what he said before the first Holyfield fight. He said, Holyfield has such a great resolve. He's never going to quit against me, so I'm going to have to physically incapacitate him.
Right.
I can't mentally break him or beat him up and have him quit.
But Jack, Tyson would have actually been a better fit for Foreman than Holyfield, even though Holyfield is actually the better fighter and actually more dangerous from round 1 to round 12. As far as matchups go, Tyson was a better fit for Foreman, and it would have been a better story if he was the one that beat Tyson. But Douglas got there first. But the thing about Foreman's comeback, and I think there's a negative to it, even though it's overall positive. Jack, you've followed this sport for over 50 years, like I have. You know a good bit of its history, as I do. No other heavyweight champ could have done what Foreman did, and that's because, Jack, Foreman was so strong and powerful that even losing, say, 20% of what he had in his first time around, even minus that 20%, he was still ahead of the field. He was strong. You couldn't hurt him. And he still had those heavy hands and that power. And eventually, as we saw with Michael Moore was beating him up pretty good. He couldn't get rid of him. And what happened? He got a little tired. He stayed in front of him. And Foreman caught him with a beautiful right on the chin. And that was all she wrote. But nobody could have done that. Jerry Quarry came back and tried to do it. It cost him his life just about. Ron Lyle came back and tried. No success. Ernie Shavers came back and tried. No. Nobody could have done what George Foreman did because he had such an overload of strength and power that even minus what he had in his prime, he still was able to pull it off.
Let me ask you this now on reflection. The USA Network used to have a segment called Fighting Words where they'd let a writer or someone, they give them a minute to talk.
Right.
And I'm at one of the fight shows and they have their crew and they had me do the Fighting Words and it made a big splash what I said. It was all over. It got in Ring Magazine. It got on this and that. Everyone was telling me it created a major buzz. This was Roy Jones right after the James Toney fight. I said, do I have a fight like for Big George Foreman? Do I have a fight for you? Roy Jones against George Foreman. And I went on why Roy Jones would beat Foreman and do it decisively. Now, this is Foreman before he fought Mora, maybe a year or so before, okay? That Roy Jones at the top of his game, all cylinders going, would he have beaten Big George Foreman at the time?
No.
No, let's not talk about the Roy Jones that came later, got older.
No Roy Jones is beating George Foreman. He was going to win rounds and get away, but Foreman's going to catch him eventually and knock him out. I have a better one. Okay? Let's say Foreman beats Jimmy Young. And then that was March of 77.
What would happen if he stopped him in the 7th round when he hurt him?
And he almost did.
Yeah.
Okay, so say he does. Say that George Foreman, who would have ended up fighting, if he won that fight, would have fought the Ali who fought Shavers 4 months later.
He wouldn't have fought.
Who wins that?
Ali would have been in better shape for sure. For sure.
Okay.
I mean, Ali fought, got in shape to the level of opposition. He didn't respect Shavers a great deal. He knew he hit hard, but he figured.
But that was about it.
He'll tire Shavers out and this and that. And Shavers got in great shape and surprised Ali. Ali would have been in better shape. I remember
he would have been in better shape, Jack, but he wouldn't have been the fighter he was in Manila or Zaire.
But
no way.
Foreman would have been mentally damaged. He wouldn't have fought with the same reckless abandon. He would have remembered how tired he got in the first fight. He would have remembered the rope it up. Oh, they're not doing that to me. It gets inside a guy's head and their trainers. Case in point, Jerry Quarry, the rematch with Joe Frazier. He remembered the first fight. Oh, I went toe-to-toe. If only I boxed him the first time. And the best strategy was to go toe-to-toe with Smoking Joe because Quarry was a puncher himself. That gave him the best chance of winning, even though it was a small one. He wasn't going to outbox Frazier.
Exactly. And he tried the second fight, and Frazier didn't let him. He ended up trading again.
Yeah, well, he was fought. Yeah, he lost all momentum in the second fight. He wasn't going to beat Joe no matter what. But like if Hearns had fought Hagler in a rematch, Hearns was going to decide to box, do this, do that. Nothing wrong with what Hearns did in the first fight. He rocked Hagler. He cut him. Maybe a lesser version of Hagler he would have beaten. And maybe that's what he would have gotten.
I don't know if Hagler could ever be as good again as he was that fight. But I see your point. But it sounds to me like if Ali and Foreman would have fought a rematch in 77, you're leaning towards Ali.
I'm leaning towards Ali. I don't think Foreman is super aggressive. And I think there's a good chance it goes the full distance. Ali gets a decision, and Foreman, if he lost 9 rounds to 6, might feel he accomplished something. Who knows?
See, Jack, in closing, I agree because Foreman when he came back was more measured. Ali can live with a measured Foreman. It gives him the room now. He doesn't take the beating on the ropes, and he has the room to pick his spots and box. So most people, I think, favor Foreman. I'm not sure that I do. I do agree Ali would have been in better shape. I don't know how much he could have turned the clock back, but I probably would have made him the favorite. But boy, I would have liked to have seen that fight.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, Frank. Great.
All right, Jack. Nice seeing you. We'll get back next week and we'll talk about the Canelo fight and start looking ahead to Haney and Lomachenko.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching.